My lords, today I'm able to bring further report regarding the Grand Archive. In this report I shall describe the new megastructure, the Grand Archive, in detail, including how to build one and what it does. I shall discuss how you acquire specimens to display in your archive and detail several examples of such specimens. We shall also discuss the new tradition tree, Archivism, the new Curator Civics, plus the new changes to the creators themselves, and finally a complete overhaul of the game start management screen. But we'll begin with the key point of the DLC, the new megastructure, the Grand Archive. The Grand Archive is the cultural centre for your empire, a place to house and display the story of your people through the greatest specimens of interest that you have collected over the years. The Archive is a single-stage structure that can be built in orbit of any colony with 25 or more pops, and it does not block other colony improvements such as an orbitable ring, or I assume a regular habitat. One assumes that you can build only one Grand Archive, and it would be smart to keep it in an inner colony, or at least somewhere heavily defended, such as your capital world, but more on why later. Before you can build a Grand Archive, you must first research a Tier 2 society tech called Galactic Archivism, but importantly, mega engineering is not required. If you find a specimen but have yet to research the megastructure, you can pay a small fee as an investment to guarantee the tech and automatically progress it by 50%. The megastructure itself costs 1,000 alloys and takes 1800 days or 5 years to build. It's worth noting that this is also the structure that houses your vivarium, the place where you can store and grow live space fauna, which we discussed last week. Of course, the Grand Archive would be nothing without the items to display, and so we need to talk about specimens and how we acquire them. The Grand Archive Story Pack adds 151 unique specimens to events, dig sites, and other content from across the base game, and new content added with Grand Archive. The development team has gone through all of the other Stellaris content as well, giving us a final total of over 240 specimens to collect, study, and appreciate. Most of the content was added to ancient relics, distant stars, and astral planes, as they are the most exploration focused of the releases. And of course, you'll require the Grand Archive DLC to use the specimen collection system. A symbol is shown when you have acquired a specimen of interest, and occasionally these are tied to a specific choice in an event, while other times they may be linked to your origin or actions. I suspect that some of our favourite event chains will now have unique specimens tied to them. Edict Monolith is given to us as an example. Should we complete this event, we are given the centered half display. A second example is Solar Sailor, and in this one, it seems that we acquire a torn solar sail. From what I've seen so far, each specimen has art and a description of lore attached. The Discoveries tab allows you to explore your collection and choose which specimens to have on display. Displaying specimens has an initial cost which increases with the number of specimens of that category that you have on display, as well as ongoing upkeep which is affected by empire size. Each specimen has its own effects while on display. Some produce a small amount of resource, while others may grant anything from energy to jobs to cloned fauna growth speed. As I touched on, each specimen also has expanded lore, and it keeps track of where and when you acquired it in the first place. Doing dig sites and events is not the only way to acquire specimens, however. You can steal them from other empires. Destroying another empire's Grand Archive allows you to plunder their artifacts. Now, the attacking empire will not steal all the relics, but they will likely steal some of them. The defending empire, meanwhile, will be able to go through the wreckage of their Grand Archive and get back some of what they lost. If they rebuild the Grand Archive, they can then redisplay those relics. The empire who did the stealing can obviously display their ill-gotten gains themselves, or, if they're feeling particularly ballsy, they can sell the stolen goods back to the empire they stole them from. I feel like criminal megacorps are going to love this one. The final way to acquire specimens is tied to minor artifacts. You can, via artifact analysis, you can dig through minor artifacts that you have left over to double check that you've not missed anything important. This can be done up to 5 times, increasing in cost per time done. Moving on from specimens to the new tradition tree, Galactic Archivism. If you remember the technology I mentioned at the start of the report, the one that unlocks the Grand Archive megastructure, well, that same tech also unlocks the new tradition tree. Empty shelves do not make for a wondrous attraction, but focusing on Archivism can help fill them up nicely. We have been shown every option of the new Archivism tree, and I shall detail it for you now, but just to note, I'm extremely happy to see that they've used the image of the spaceship. Or is it a hand? I'm quite sure Reddit knows the answer to this. Anyway, Archivism gives us a special agenda, Astute Observation, which is minus 50% exhibit unlocking cost, and increases our anomaly discover chance by 5%. Finishing the tree gives 15% specimen output, an ascension perk slot, and each completed category in your collection an additional minus 15% relic activation cost, essentially meaning that relic actives are cheaper to use. The individual traditions are appropriately tied to the theme, providing archaeology bonuses, science ship boosts, specimen display bonuses, and selling cost bonuses. And finally, they'll unlock a new set of policies. The policies appear to give output boosts to specific subtypes of specimens, i.e. galactic history, xenogeology, and aesthetic wonders. Now we move on to Civics. As I mentioned at the start, we are getting some new Civics with Grand Archive. They are Galactic Curators, Antiquarian Expertise, and Caretaker Network. Caretaker Network seems to have two versions, one for Hive and one for machines, and I would guess that Antiquarian Expertise is specifically for megacorps, given how similar all these four are, but I must state I'm not 100% sure about that at time of writing. However, I do know that empires who take these civics all begin with Galactic Archivism as a guaranteed research option, one common specimen of each category, and they get a discount when dealing with the Curator Order. These empires also get a 25% discount when building a Grand Archive, and have an increased chance to discover anomalies, but they also tend to overwork their bureaucrats, reducing their effectiveness by a small amount. Nothing delights these empires more than a new find. Specimen discoveries and completion of archaeology sites grant them a unity bonus. Next up, we've got changes to the Curator Orders. Perhaps unsurprisingly, the Curators are quite intrigued by your massive collection of specimens and relics, and you can impress them with your collection should you share similar interests. If your collection is substantial enough to attract their attention, you could ask them for various things, be it specialised museum plans, or perhaps help setting up cultural enrichment programs. Naturally, they'll want to be compensated for their help, but impress them enough and they'll even be willing to allow you to give them a generous donation in exchange for the honour of selecting a relic to care for from their own special collection. And just a note on relics, we've been told that we're getting an additional 15 relics with the Grand Archive. Supposedly that's 5 for each of the specimen subcategories. And finally, the Custodian team have been hard at work. It would seem that we're getting a completely reworked game creation screen. Enjoy the image displayed on screen. There is no more asking which shape is which galaxy. Thanks for watching, folks. If you enjoy me covering Stellaris news, please let me know in the comments. And if you want to hear more about Grand Archive, then please click the video on screen now.